Hey, hope everyone's doing well. Today, we're going to learn about Albania.
Yeah. Where you from?
I'm from Albania originally.
Wow. What you got?
So, this is second on our list, and it's a fairly small country, only 2.7 million people. Population density, 100 people per square kilometer, so not too dense either. So, fairly small. We're going to check out where it is in the world. So, here's our map. It is a Mediterranean country. It's actually fairly close to Italy. So this is something I was not aware of, that it was actually right across from Italy. What we're going to see later is that their exports aren't all that great, which kind of surprises me considering they are in the Mediterranean and they have access to the other European countries by the way of the sea. But so it does border Greece and Montenegro, Kosovo, and North Macedonia. So some fairly less known countries, smaller, but that gives you an idea of where it is. And the capital, I believe this is pronounced Tirana. Probably got that wrong. Tirana, the capital of Albania, is known for its colorful Ottoman, fascist, and Soviet-era architecture. So let me just zoom in, and we'll just go to a random street location here, and we'll just see how it looks. Okay, well, it actually looks pretty nice.
These motherfuckers don't know me. I'm f***ing Albanian, baby.
From the way it was describing its architecture, they were calling it like fascist and Soviet era. I can see some of the Soviet era look, but not a bad looking place. So Albania, what is it in the news for currently? This is something I like to do, is just pull up the news. What's going on in the country? And when you do this, it kind of just gives you information that you otherwise wouldn't have had. So let's just see, is Albania a Russian ally? Within the wider Balkans, Albania is considered to be most pro-EU and pro-Western country in the region, unlike its neighbors. And it has little support for Russia. Okay, so Albania is more of a Western aligned, Western Europe, more closely aligned to the United States rather than kind of Russia and its parties. So I noticed this, Albania plans to become the first cashless country. Now, I know a lot of countries have already kind of made this move, like especially in Asia, they've like China, they really moved strongly towards just being able to like pay by your phone or those methods and not using cash. But the Albanian Prime Minister, Edi Rama, has pledged to make the country a cashless place by 2030. A move that has left many in disbelief in a country where cash is the king and trust in banks is almost non-existent. So this says beauty salons, small shops, telecommunications companies, and grocery stores prefer to accept cash. And it looks like they're trying to do this because Albania is considered a gray economy. Well, it has a large gray economy, and a gray economy is also known as a shadow economy or the informal economy. And this is items and transactions that are happening without taxation, basically. So it's kind of happening just under the cover. It's like, oh, you pay your friend to cut your hair, and that cash just goes back and forth. It doesn't really go into the system in any way. So this is saying the informal economy in Albania is estimated to be between 30 and 50% of the GDP, which is quite high. So I imagine that this will be a problem not just for Albania, but for people all over the world resisting that change, because just like this politician says, they've called the idea an attack on the personal freedom.
Don't be pushing me like that, bro. Come on. You looking at, mother? Get the off me. Hey, what the you look? Come here. Hey, I'm looking at you.
And yeah, it makes sense. Do we really want the government knowing every transaction that we make? There are reduced freedoms in that, and there's efficiencies that are made by being cashless, but at the same time, it really gives the government lots of power over the people, and it definitely can make moves towards something more authoritarian. So just as a world, as a globe, that's something we'll need to work through. So like I mentioned, I know Albania does not have too large of exports. I mean, it doesn't have very large of an economy. It's the 132nd largest exporter globally. So it's quite far down, but once again, it's not that large of a country. And last year, its top exports were to Italy, Serbia, and Greece, which makes sense because it borders at least two of those. And total exports were about 4 billion. And it exports things like footwear, apparel, iron and steel, and electrical components. So by the way, here's the flag of Albania. So it has this historical symbol that dates back to the 15th century, and Skanderbeg, who was a national hero who led a revolt against the Ottoman Empire. The red color symbolizes bloodshed, and the eagle represents freedom and sovereignty. It kind of looks a lot like the Prussia flag. Kind of has that same eagle on it, and as well as the Austrian flag. And so probably they were all kind of inspired by each other. So let's look at more of the population. So Albania is weighted fairly heavily towards the age group around 30 to 40, kind of around the 25 to 40, which is usually a good sign for the economy, because the people that produce the most GDP are kind of the 30 to 40-year-olds. So if you have a large bubble around that age group like we have here, then that's usually associated with an economic boom. And so I would expect Albania, just based off of the demographics here, I would expect them to have some economic stability for at least the next 15 years or so, outside of any other external impacts. You can see on the right, their population actually peaked around 1990, and they've actually been on falling for 35 years now. So let me go back a few years and kind of see what their pyramid would look like. So it looks like the last big generation was born around that 1990 time, and you can see this is their pyramid, and so really that looks fairly healthy, how that looks. But then that generation that's kind of around 30 now, that generation just hasn't had kids. You see, we're looking right around here, and now we're expecting, if we have a bunch of 30-year-olds, we'd be expecting to see a large bubble down here, this generational bubble. Like you have this older generation, this middle generation, and then you would expect to see this younger generation pop up, but they haven't. And so Albania's actually been declining for 35 years now. So, we talk about some places like, if I just do Europe as a whole, Europe as a whole is just now starting to decline. Or let's pull up Asia. Asia has more, but let's go to Japan, another notorious decliner. Once again, so Japan is maybe about 10 or 15 years ago just started to decline. But so that's something I was not expecting, is Albania has been declining for quite a while. So here's their pyramid again. And as we go out into the future, this middle generation will just continue to get older, and the younger generations are not having kids. And so Albania will just slowly lose people over time until one day, if we go all the way to 2100, looks like they're expected to almost be below 1 million. So their population will be less than half by 2100. And their pyramid looks more like a coffin instead of a pyramid. All right, so this is how we pronounce the capital of Albania.
Is at the eastern end of the Strait of Otranto and has its capital at Tirana.
I'm a physical therapist, and I live and serve as a missionary in Tirana, Albania. Okay,
so Tirana, that's how you pronounce that capital. Okay, so I pulled up Numbeo, our trusted cost of living site, and as expected, Albania is quite a bit cheaper than New York. I mean, a meal is going to be half the price as it would be in New York. Milk, though, is more expensive, almost 38% more expensive. Bread or rice, though, are only about 25% of the cost as they would be in New York. Bananas are more expensive. I think that makes sense, right? I don't know if they have too many banana producers around Albania. Clothing, so jeans, dresses, all that's about the same price as you would expect in New York. So that's actually quite expensive for somewhere like Albania for clothes. Sometimes you'll see these cities and they'll surprise you about how expensive clothes are, although everything else in the city is fairly cheap. Rent per month, one bedroom in the city center would be about $820, which is only 20% that you would expect in New York. So at a first glance, you'd say, yes, this city's much cheaper, However, if you're a local and you're earning money in this Albanian currency, which is a lek, yeah, it's an Albanian lek, then your purchasing power is actually 57% lower than in New York. So yes, everything is 50% cheaper, but basically you're also earning, much less. So that offsets. So actually, if you're a local earning in that local currency, then this would actually be quite an expensive place to live for you.
Baby, when I come to London, come chill with a real Albanian. I started in the streets with nothing.
And also, we're still comparing this to New York, which is basically one of the most expensive cities in the world. So, to only be half the price of the like for a restaurant, yes, it's half the price, but also that's half the price of a very expensive place. And also, you're not earning much if you're living in Tirana. So it sounds like this is more of an expensive place to live, especially if you're trying to buy milk. So let's look up an Airbnb if we were to stay for a month and just see what might pop up. Let's check out this first one. This is a 2-bedroom for $427 a month. And Airbnb does have nice discounts if you stay for a week or for a month. So you can see here's their regular price if you were to just stay for 30 days. Or if you were to stay for 28 days, this would be the price. But since it's actually a month, then you discount that. So they give you this pretty nice discount. So this Airbnb would only be, so this 2-bedroom, 3-bed, 1 bath would only be $427 a month. So nice big bed. Normal looking bathroom, plenty of rooms. So yeah, especially for if you have like a family, this would be, if you had to go stay somewhere if you had to go to Albania for a month, this looks like the Airbnbs are not too bad here. Maybe you could take a step up. This one is $860 a month. It's nicer looking, but it is going to be a bit more expensive. So let's look up what's the climate like in Tirana. So it looks like it's kind of a mild country. It gets a little bit hot in the summer, but then cold in the winter, but not too cold. Looks like it stays between most of the time. Between maybe 35 degrees and 90 degrees. So it has both sides of the temperature band, but it's fairly in the middle there. What's the best time to visit? Well, we can scroll down to the tourism score and beach score, and yeah, so in the spring, summer, fall, it has pretty good tourism scores. So kind of between June and September looks like are the best times to visit, and that tourism score basically looks at how much cloud cover is there, how much rain is there, and is it a warm temperature? And so if you take those variables, the best times are around between June and September. So the summers aren't too hot and the winters aren't too cold is how this looks like. Before we go, I'm going to talk more about the currency. This says bring your currency basically to convert to the Albanian currency. And cash rules in Albania. Even with major cities like Tirana, you can't rely on your credit card. Many places accept euros as well as the Albanian lek. So it's a very cash reliant society, but the leadership is trying to point them towards a cashless society. So be interesting to see how they make that change over the next 5 years.
That mother disrespects me. Where I'm from, I don't take that. I don't take it here. I won't take it anywhere else in the world. I'm Albanian, baby.
So I hope you guys learned something. I know I did. Every time I look at these countries in this way, I always come away with something, and it was always valuable. So thank you for joining me along. And the next country is Algeria, and I'll see you when that one comes out.